Okay, I think I've got everything good to go here. I've got my chat up. So if you guys need to message me at any point, feel free. All right, so I'm just going to start out with a little introduction. My name is Maddie. I go by the she, they pronouns, and I run Daddy Tats, which is just my own tattooing business, I guess. I also have some notes, so if I'm looking this way, that would be why, because like I said, I'm very nervous with this type of stuff. So I'm based out of Fort Collins now. I've tattooed professionally for a little over a year now, though I actually began my self-taught journey during COVID of 2020. So it's been a while since I started, but I pretty much just got into it professionally over the last year. I moved here at the beginning of June. This is Nugget, by the way, at the beginning of June with my partner from Bellingham, Washington, which is actually where I started my own private studio. I did that for about 6 months before relocating to Fort Collins. Hi, Allie. And yeah, since being here, I ended up joining a shop in Fort Collins. I stayed there for about 2 months and then ultimately decided to leave and helped facilitate the opening of Witch of the West Tattoo, which is in Fort Collins. I'm going to go ahead and admit somebody that's in the waiting room really quick here. But yeah, we just opened Witch of the West Tattoo. We are cooperative of for females and queer people. And to my knowledge, we're the only queer-owned shop in town, which is pretty cool. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm entirely self-taught. Like I said, I started in 2020, but like really the place I was living in at the time did not have like a big community around self-taught tattoo. So it's really cool to be here in Colorado because I'm finding it's a little bit more conducive to that type of stuff. So that has been a nice warm welcome. But basically today we're going to cover, we have, a relatively short amount of time to cover quite a lot of topics. So I'm going to do the best I can. But really a lot of it's just going to be grazing over. So again, if you guys have specific questions that come up while I'm talking, feel free to hit the chat, or if you want to wait till the end, there will be like a question section. Okay, so we're going to be covering kind of tattooing in general, including, self-taught versus going the apprenticeship route, how to get started, what that looks like, how to choose your materials, resources that I used, where to learn and practice. We're going to be talking about business side of things in general. We're going to be talking about a little bit about social media and marketing and all that good stuff. And then again, we'll have a section at the end for questions. I don't know let's see how chat works. I think you can send little emojis. If you guys are comfortable sending emojis, could you send me an emoji in the chat if you're here, particularly because you're interested in learning how to tattoo? Just send me like any cute little emoji. Thank you guys. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, hi, Sam. Good to see you. Awesome. And then if you are interested, if you've already started and you feel comfortable, go ahead and send me another emoji as well. Awesome. And yes, to answer Heidi's question, I am currently recording. So again, if you guys are not comfortable being on camera, please go ahead and turn your camera off. I've got it pinned on me as the speaker, but I just don't want to step over any boundaries there. So awesome. That's great. Already a tattoo artist. That's great. So we've got lots of different kind of, levels of skill, which is really cool. Okay, so kind of a little bit of a disclosure at the beginning is that like I said, I've only been doing this for a year now. So my opinion and, what I say is going to vary greatly from other people that you will talk to in this industry. So don't turn to me as your sole and only like resource. While I'm happy to be here and answer questions, I also have to say, like, I've gotten so many valuable opinions from other people who have gotten into this industry in a different way. So again, just like really widening your scope and making sure that you've got all the information before kind of entering into this. So my first kind of thing that we'll touch on is self-taught versus the more traditional apprenticeship route, right? This can be really tricky because while I want to, obviously encourage everyone to go the self-taught route, I will say that if you can find an apprenticeship where you feel, safe and respected and valued in that apprenticeship, like 100%, that's always going to be the best way to go, because you'll have a mentor there, the full time, that can kind of tell you, guide you as you go. The self-taught route is definitely, more hardy. You're going to have to do a lot of investigating on your own. You're going to have to build community on your own. You're going to have to ask a lot of questions and do a lot of Googling and YouTubing. I can't even tell you how many hours I have spent on YouTube and TikTok and all that. So while I really love that I am self-taught and it's something I'm really proud of, it's definitely a choice. On top of that, being self-taught in this industry is typically a pretty taboo thing. And I think that that's changing as there's a new wave of artists, and we're getting a lot of people that tattooing is like really transitioning into, focusing on more like fine arts. And so I think that that's great, but also just acknowledging that you're going to have to do a lot of the work on your own. So if you so long as you're a very motivated person and you're willing to put in the work, I feel like the self-taught route could be good for you. But just know that if you're hoping to self-teach and then go to get an apprenticeship or go walk into a shop and try to get a job, you might not get the best response. And, that's okay. And it's at the discretion of each shop. But a lot of people in this industry don't appreciate people who don't have to go the like mandatory 6 months apprenticeship route, if that makes sense. So just having a good idea of what that looks like for you. Along with that, I feel like for me personally, I went this route because financially, I wasn't able to go the apprenticeship route. I was working, a 9-to-5, and it was really important to me that I had the money I needed to pay my bills, and taking time off to do an apprenticeship just wasn't in the cards. And along with that, I really didn't feel comfortable doing an apprenticeship with anyone in my town that wasn't, a female artist. And so I think just assessing like what's important to you in your learning and which way you want to go with that. But does anyone have any questions regarding like self-taught versus the apprenticeship route? So I know I kind of just barely touched the surface on that, but if you have any specific questions, let me know. And I'm just going to be chugging water because when I talk, my mouth gets so dry when I'm doing any sort of like public speaking. So.
Hello, sorry, I'm outside, so there might be a lot of wind noise. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I have an apprenticeship right now that's currently falling apart.
Okay.
And one question I have for you and for anybody in the audience is, did y'all pay for your apprenticeship? How much is it? Do you see it as like a worthwhile cost? Like, what's the quality of education you're getting versus the money you're paying? Or should apprenticeships be free and you pay with labor? What's your opinion and your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If anyone in here has experience with an apprenticeship, I would love if you guys could step in here, because I personally don't. But that's a great question. I know that sometimes, yeah, it can be free, but you have to work for like 6 months to a year or something like that to kind of earn your spot, or it can be paid as well. I'm curious, do you mind me asking if are you paying for your apprenticeship? And if you're not comfortable answering that, that's totally fine.
No, I'm totally comfortable. I started the apprenticeship, and it was free. My mentor was just like, "Hey, just shoot me some money occasionally, or like whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you can afford, because I know you got to eat. I got to eat too." So I was like, "Okay, bet." So I started off, cleaning the shop and doing what I could, getting food for people when I could, and
Mhm.
um, stuff like that. And then my mentor and the shop owner, they all hit hard times. And my mentor had said she had paid 500 a month for her apprenticeship,
Mhm.
and so I could tell she started feeling like resentment or bitterness, etc. And so she just recently told us that it was going to be $25 a lesson, and
Okay.
then a $25 booth rent fee for the shop owner anytime we tattooed. So then whenever we would tattoo up there, it was going to be $50 a session.
Gotcha.
Uh, and then, uh, but unfortunately, the quality of the education or experience has not been worth the money. So I
Yeah.
haven't really been learning for a while. So
Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry to hear that. That is a really interesting situation. I've actually never heard, at least of my friends in the industry that have gone the apprenticeship route, I've actually never heard of them paying out of pocket for any of it. So I do think that's interesting. I think that they're probably justified as long as they're transparent and all that in asking you to pay. However, if you feel like it's not meeting your needs as far as education goes and you already have like some apprenticeship under your belt, I'm sure that looking into transferring somewhere else or I know it sucks to start over, but ultimately, if you're feeling like it's not serving your purposes and you're not learning anything, like this industry can be a very fast learning curve if you're in the right situation. And if you're not, it's going to be very slow and drug out. And there's no need for you to stick in a situation that doesn't serve, I don't know where you're at as far as like jobs go, but I would expect you probably gave up a job or time working to pursue this, right? So the faster you can get along to, becoming a tattoo artist and running your own hours and stuff, the better, in my opinion, at least. Um, Leah asked, curious how the response was when you launched yourself to the internet. Did you get flack from the tattooing community? I'm a very public person and I have TikTok and Instagram and I'm pretty present on those apps. And so, yes, I would say, and I'll kind of like touch base on this later as well, but I would say, yes, for me personally, because I'm so transparent about being self-taught, I definitely got a lot of flack from people. So you kind of do have to have tough skin, but I know a lot of artists that do not disclose that they're self-taught and they are self-taught and they get by just fine. Nobody bothers them. It's only as soon as you mention that you're self-taught that people will start like calling you a scratcher, and it's not very fun. But honestly, like I said, again, this industry is really changing, and for my opinion, in the better. And yeah, I think you kind of just got to stick in your own lane and keep doing what you're doing because people are gonna always have something to say. But awesome. Any other questions on self-taught versus apprenticeship? Does anyone have an idea of what a general timeline for an apprenticeship looks like? I've heard anywhere from 3 months to a year to complete it, but how far along in the apprenticeship do you typically start tattooing on real skin? That's a great question, Tavi. So again, I don't have personal experience with an apprenticeship. I'm self-taught and then I jumped into a traditional studio setting. However, talking to the guy that I worked with that did do an apprenticeship there, he said it took him about 6 months to complete and he started tattooing after 3 months. And that was in a pretty good, like healthy shop environment. So that's my frame of reference. But if anyone has anything to add to that, feel free to add it to the chat.
Hi, Maddie. I have a different opinion than you on apprenticeships. I think listening to this other person's commentary about their shop having them pay, I'm a Salt Lake tattooer, so I only really know for Utah. But here apprenticeships are entirely paid. Like I've never heard of a free apprenticeship,
Oh,
like ever.
yeah.
But I'm self-taught, so I don't know that much, but I do have a lot of friends that did do apprenticeships here, and they're usually 6 months to like a year and a half, and then usually you're paying like a few $100s a month at least. Um, yeah, I wouldn't recommend them, but hearing that that artist was asking for money was not surprising to me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess too, I should state that I've only worked in Washington State and Colorado State, and both of those states are very similar in that like tattooing culture, tattooing laws, it's all very, very lax. So depending on where you are, especially that doesn't surprise me,
Totally.
hearing that in like Utah that they would charge. But that's actually, I'm really glad that you brought that up because that's definitely, I'm gonna enter someone into the chat here really quick.
Yeah, everyone's laws are super different. Utah is actually one of the most relaxed states in the country for tattooing.
Okay.
Um, Salt Lake has the most tattoo shops per capita of the US. So it's
Oh,
like this
dang.
really weird little hotspot for like self-taught artists, which is really amazing. I saw someone in the chat talking about Oregon. Oregon requires you to go to like a trade school for tattooing. It's like $10,000,
Yep.
and I think it's like a year. So like in Oregon, you have to go to tattoo school. In Salt Lake, you don't have to get registered as a like you're not licensed as an individual tattooer. You're
Mhm.
licensed like under the shop you're working out of. So if you can just find a place to rent and then get like your health inspection done and stuff, and like get your business license through the city, that's all you have to do to be a legal tattooer here.
Mhm.
But even in Utah, it varies like county to county. But yeah, self-taught tattooers thrive here. But I have only heard of paid apprenticeships and bad apprenticeship experiences
Okay.
here. So.
That's good to know. I have heard of good apprenticeship experiences, though they're far and few between. And then actually my studio mate is from, or she learned in Oregon. So she did go to tattoo school and her reviews of that were not great. So
Yeah,
sorry to
I
anyone that lives in Oregon.
yeah, RIP Oregon. I do think that apprenticeships, like you come out of it a better, like you start your tattoos better, I feel like. Like my first probably like 50 tattoos were kind of fucked up. But
Yeah.
if you're doing an apprenticeship, you're kind of starting off with like this huge advantage in education. So I feel like people are going into it making far less mistakes, which is
Yeah.
like really, really great. I've done my fair share of shitty apartment tattoos, and I love them. And like DIY tattooing has such a special place in my heart. But I also think I had a lot less like respect for tattooing when I first started, and I didn't really understand like this is someone's body, this is like a permanent alteration to their appearance. So it was much more like, oh, I'm just gonna like fuck around with my friends in my apartment. And I think transitioning to like using it as a career was like I had to come to peace with the fact that I altered people's skin in ways that weren't always like super good. And that's like the biggest con of self tattooing.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I will say that like I talk about with my suite mate a lot because there's two of us self-taught in our studio and then the other one who went to tattoo school and then she has an apprentice as well. And the juxtaposition between us and the way that we learned is really interesting because I mean, we have a lot in common, but also yeah, it's definitely like the curve with self-taught can be really fast, but it is rough. Like there's a good chance you're not going to put out the best work to begin with, and it can be like pretty hard really getting into it. But yeah, I feel like if you really dedicate yourself to learning and like learning the history of tattooing as well and all that sort of stuff, I feel like you can get to, a good place where you're understanding, you are making permanent changes to people's bodies and how to do that respectfully and how to do that like with transparency as well, because I think that's, and we'll touch on that in a bit here, but I want to keep moving just because like I said, we've got a lot of stuff to touch on here and not a lot of time. So awesome. Okay, how to get started. So again, like we just talked about, it's going to really vary depending on where you are. And so where I live in Fort Collins is actually really similar to what it sounds like Salt Lake City is, where you can actually operate without a personal license, at least in my county. And again, you need to check your own county's health department and municipal records to kind of learn what the rules are. But you can actually operate under a licensed shop. So but to get started, the first thing I always tell people, no matter what, is you need to get your bloodborne pathogens training. And this can be done on, like American Red Cross. It can be done online. I think it's like $35 or $25 or something. And it really only takes like probably under an hour to complete. That is the first step you want to do. And even though I want to stress, even though you're getting your bloodborne pathogens certification, that does not mean that you are necessarily, fully comprehending and understanding the risks that are associated with bloodborne pathogens. So I really want to stress, like, before you even touch skin or fruit or fake skin, whatever it is, really, really learn how to keep your entire workstation sanitary, how to do things safe, because that is the biggest thing with tattooing. Is like, anyone can tattoo, but you need to tattoo in a way that is safe for everyone involved. And you don't want to give anybody an infection. That would literally be the worst. So I'll give you guys some recommendations down the line here for some resources that I used just when I was learning for station setup and takedown and all that good stuff. In conjunction with that, like I said, you need to look at your county's health department for local licensing requirements. Some require you to have a personal license, and some require your shop to have a license, and some require both. Just depends on where you are. Licensing is generally not too expensive. I think when I lived in Washington, I paid like $25 for my shop license and $25 for my personal, and I'm pretty sure it's really similar here. It looks like a big, scary, intense process, and it can be, but I promise you, like, licensing is, at least if it depends on where your state is, like Sam was saying, if you're in Oregon, you do have to go to tattoo school, which that sucks. But if you were in Colorado or Utah or Washington, or, again, you got to look up what your rules are, but being self-taught and getting licensed is actually pretty easy. The biggest part is just having that bloodborne pathogen certification. In my state, I have to be CPR certified. So that can also happen through American Red Cross online. I think that's like another $25. And then if you're going to license your own shop, if you want to start a private studio and just have you working as the primary artist, that's what I did when I began. You don't have to start out and like join a shop or like start something huge. Like, you can really just do a private studio. But basically, to do that, at least in this state, you just have to do like a written procedures log, things like making sure that you have a sink in the procedure area or a sink hookup, and you can usually talk your renters into like allowing you to install a sink if you pay for it. A sharps disposal plan, make sure that the whole area is like non-absorbent, no carpet, vinyl furniture, stuff like that. Making sure you're labeling everything that has biohazard materials in it with a biohazard sticker. You can literally get those off Amazon. It's very easy. And then making sure you're vaccinated for hepatitis B. And there's more on top of that. I will actually, let's see if I can drop in the Denver municipality municipality, am I saying that word right? Municipality code for you guys. And that might help you. Oops, we got someone in the waiting room. Just give me a second here. There we go. I will drop in the municipality code for you guys if you guys are in the Denver area, or look and see if you guys are in Colorado. Look and see, some counties operate by Denver code, including Fort Collins. So I will just drop that in the chat if anyone's interested in looking at that. And if you guys are not understanding it, there can be a lot of like legal jargon in there as well. If you guys are ever not understanding anything, there are county reps that you can reach out to, whether that's through, whether that is through the health department or your actual local government. You can find an email for someone and reach out, and they can at least put you in the right direction to talk to someone who understands the code and can tell you exactly what you need to get going. Give me just a second here. And then lastly, once you will be actually, you know, working on client skin or on human skin, just having a client contract or consent form, make sure you check the rules and regulations regarding body art in your local municipality. And then those are actually really, honestly, pretty easy. Like most of the time you can look up kind of an outline, or they'll actually, you can just like pay for a form and fill in your business name or whatever. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything with licensing, anything along the lines of what I just kind of talked about? I know that was kind of like an information blast. So if you guys are not clear on something or you're feeling lost, that's totally fair. But I would be happy to answer questions if you guys have any.
Hey, I just had a question about, you know, you mentioned that you like worked a 9 to 5 when you were starting out. I'm doing the same thing. So with like getting a space to kind of start like practicing or like using your tattoo machine, whatever, like how did you go through the process of like finding a place, and like did you get a small business loan to kind of start out with like paying the rent there? Did you just do weekends? It's like, what was kind of like your initial starting out process? Because I'm trying to find a place to I haven't even bought a tattoo machine yet, because I'm still like working on, like I'm trying to do this thing where I'm like gathering all this information and really working on like, you know, the art and all that stuff. Really trying to figure out, this is something I would really, really like to do. So just kind of like, how would you suggest, or how did you go about, oh, thank you. How did you go about finding a place, like setting a schedule to go practice there, and kind of when or how long it took to start bringing people in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. You know, when I opened my studio, I was never intending on it being a full-time thing. And I think this is actually like a really great frame of mind to have when you become self-taught, because there's a good chance you're not going to immediately have a lot of clients. People are always really excited to hear that you're learning to tattoo, but a lot of people aren't super willing to just like let you draw on them. But they're like, yeah, hit me up in a couple months when you're like up and going. So I went into it. I found a space that was really, really cheap and followed, you know, all the codes for my county. And it was a super crappy studio. I think it was like 300 square feet or something. I don't remember, but it was really small. It looked like an old like dentist office. And I just decided I was going to work out of there for like 2 days a week at least, and that would pay the rent. The rent was like pretty cheap at that time. I think it was like $420 a month. And so I just kind of went in on that, being like, okay, I'm going to work here 2 days a week on Saturday and Sunday or whatever, because I'm working my 9 to 5. And honestly, that just turned into like the time that I had there, being able to get in and practice at least 2 days a week, and then sometimes more if I was willing to go in after work. Like it very quickly turned into like, oh, now I'm tattooing 3 days a week. Now I'm tattooing 4 days a week. The thing that's really cool about this industry is that there's so much demand for tattoos. And I mean, I think that's relative on where you live, but for me, at least in the last 2 places I've lived, there's been tons of demand. And so even as like a newer self-taught person, like when I had started out, there were people that were like, hey, you know, we just got out of COVID and I haven't been able to get into my artist for like, they have a wait list of like 2 years. Could I get in and just get this like small thing? And they turned into my clients, and yeah, it just grew really fast. So I think going into it with the mindset of like, you don't have to do something huge and big. It can be really small. It can be, as long as it fits the code, it can be in like a dingy old office or whatever. as long as it's following all the rules and regulations, and as long as you can afford to be in there, 2 or 3 days a week. Once you're licensed and you're able to charge, you can probably pay that off pretty quickly. And then to answer your other question, yes, I did take out a business loan, and I am still paying that off. And I think honestly, this is like a pretty lucrative business, to be honest. And so I have no doubt that that'll be paid off like by the end of the year. So hope that answers your question, but let me know if I didn't.
Oh, that was great. Thank you. Along that, sorry if I'm like taking up all this time, but for the small business loan, do you have like an estimate? I know it's different like state to state. I'm in
Mhm.
North Carolina. So like, oh my God, I'm in the triangle, like near Raleigh, like the capital. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
it's so expensive out here.
Yeah, totally.
So I was just kind of wondering like what you might suggest a
Taking out.
ballpark number for the small business
Yeah,
loan.
totally. I think I took out about $5,000, and I don't even think I ended up using all of it, to be honest. I'm just gonna send this to you guys now. I created an Amazon list with basically every material you need. I mean, depending on, I haven't really talked about figuring out like what machine you want to use and all that sort of stuff, because that can be like a whole, again, like we don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying to get through as much as I can. But we can talk about, basically I made an Amazon list for all of the essentials, like the bare essentials for, cheap or as cheap as I could find them. And so I'll share that with you guys now. And this is if you are interested in learning with a rotary machine, which is, I learned with a coil machine and then a rotary machine with a power supply. And then I switched to a wireless rotary machine. And if you guys have no idea what that means, that's okay. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. But I will send you guys, let me go ahead and get this link in the chat for you guys really quick here. And then full disclosure, I just made this Amazon list today. I make commission off of it. So if you guys don't fuck with that, you can just go and like individually shop these things out. And if you don't want to support Amazon, hell yeah, go buy them from somewhere else. But I figured this would be a good way to at least get a compiled list for you guys. And then on top of that, I'm going to drop it in the chat here. On top of that, this list does not include cartridges, which is basically needles for your rotary machine. It does not include ink, and it does not include a stencil printer, because cartridges and ink, I strongly believe you should source outside of Amazon directly from a supplier, or a verified source. And a stencil printer is great, but you can get by without one if you really need to, if you're really hurting for money. So I think the total materials needed, I added this all up in my cart today, and I think it totaled up to $429. So you should expect to pay, close to $430 just for your basic starting materials if you have nothing, going yet. And yes, Hannah makes a great point. Inked Out Supply is a great spot. And I also hate Amazon, so I'm not upset if you don't use this list to actually purchase two things. I just more so made it so you have like a reference to look at and see like what kind of stuff I like to use. Oh gosh, okay, let me sorry, I don't know why you guys aren't seeing my message. Hold on just a second. Let me see. Send chat to everyone. There we go. Okay, is that showing up? And then I also made a list to the right, which is called items worth splurging for. And that's just basically what I have: an iPad, my pencil, the stencil printer that we still use in the shop. I bought it when I was beginning, and we literally still use it. Like it's great. So, but on the left, you'll see a list with all of the essentials, and that's just like the bare essentials to get you going. And then I don't know if you guys can see my notes on them, but I basically wrote, what they're used for and how essential they are. So if you need to scamp out on some stuff or like buy things one at a time, etc. Okay, it looks like everyone got that. That's great. Okay. Any questions on that? And again, we'll keep we'll keep going on, and we do have a spot at the end for questions, but if I missed anything, let me know. We're making pretty decent time though, honestly. I hope. As far as materials needed, let's kind of touch on that really quick. So, I feel like a tablet and some sort of pen to go with that are kind of the bare essentials, although you can get by with just note paper and pen. It's going to be a little more difficult for you, but you can do it. I did that for quite a few months when I was starting out, actually. I did a lot of stuff without a lot of money. So, yes, it's kind of expensive to get into, but you can really like pay for things as you go and just keep upgrading and buying things for yourself as you get into it. That way you're not just like shooting down, you know, $400 to $500 right off the bat. And then the app that I use for my actual drawings is Procreate. And if anyone has any other recommendations, please throw them in here. I've only ever used Procreate, so I'm really open to hearing what you guys have to say. Okay, and then just talking about different types of machines, and again, later I'll send you guys some resources that I used while I was learning, and that will help you really like greatly. Hannah says they use Photoshop, but switching to Procreate. That's really interesting. I was talking to someone else who was using Photoshop the other day, but I can't remember yeah. I really like Procreate. There's definitely some limitations, but as far as just like drawing tattoo designs goes, it works pretty great. And yes, Photoshop's so expensive. Any sort of Adobe app is like ridiculously expensive. And I'm all about just like doing everything with the least amount of money possible. Okay, different types of machines. So when you're starting out, you're going to hear two different, and you'll also hear people will be like, don't call them tattoo guns, they're machines. So we'll just get that out of the way. People like get their panties in a wad over that, but it really doesn't matter. Tattoo machines, there's two different types. There's going to be rotary and coil. Some of them will come wired with a power supply that kind of runs its own thing, and you can run your own voltage and all that good stuff. Learning on a coil machine is going to be very different than learning on a rotary machine. Coil machines are, you know, typically used by more traditional folks in the industry, and they're really awesome. They can like really pack a punch. However, there's a lot more elements that goes into learning how to use a coil machine. That's what I learned on. It was hell. I would not recommend it. But if you really want to like understand the inner workings of a machine and how it works, it's a great visual representation, because it's literally like, it looks like it was just all pasted together. It's like needle, and then yeah, you can like see everything as it's moving. So that's kind of cool. On top of that, it's just going to be a lot heavier and require a lot more. You're going to have to learn how to maintain your machine. And so no shade on coil machines. I just personally like to run a rotary. It's like the one that I use is like literally like, it feels like somebody just took their electric toothbrush and like removed the head from it and stuck a cartridge in it. So I love it. It's great. Feels like a big pen. What are the benefits to using a power source machine versus a battery powered one? And what is your personal preference? Using a power, big benefit is that batteries die and you always have to charge them. And mine does pretty well, but after like 6 hours, it's usually teetered out. So I always have to like keep some charged on backup. On top of that, with using a power source, you have really fine control over how much voltage you're using. So you can really refine it. My current machine, I actually have no idea like what voltage I'm running at. It's entirely done. You basically like tilt it to set the voltage. So I literally have no idea like what I'm running it at half the time. But if you're learning, the machine I sent you guys on Amazon, actually, I love that machine. I tell people about it all the time. It's like my ride or die machine. I still swear it's just as good as the, you know, $1,100 machine that I use now. It's got a timer on it so you can track how long things are taking you. It tells you exactly how much voltage you're running it at. The stroke's like pretty good. And all in all, I think it's a really great beginner machine. But You can also plug it in like it's an iPhone, and it just charges and it lasts forever and ever. So hopefully that answers that question. Some battery machines come with multiple batteries also, so you can have one charging while you are working. Yes, that's very true. That's exactly what I do. I always have a battery on backup, because there is a good chance that if you're doing a really long tattooing day, that one will die. So yeah, I think if you guys are, if you're interested, I would look more into that, because I can only tell you, my own personal preference. I have come to really love working on a rotary and with a battery, just because it's simple and it's easy to travel with, and it's I really like that. But I would definitely Google and like look at some forums and see what other people have to say, because I'm sure other people have some valuable opinions around that. So okay, then we will talk about needles. Needles can be super confusing when you're first starting out. You're like, what do I buy? There's like 50 different types. If you're starting with just line work, and that's what I recommend doing, is not even touching shading or working with shading until you've got your line work down. I would just recommend starting with a round liner, and you're going to see those labeled on, when you look for needles, you'll see usually a series of 4 numbers and then two letters afterwards. So it'll be like 1007 RL or 1205 RS. That basically is telling you the first 2 numbers are going to be your needle gauge. And that is, there's 4 different gauges to my knowledge, at least. And the narrower the gauge, or the diameter of the needle, essentially, the more controlled and finer the flow of ink is. However, you're also going to have, if you're working with a really fine needle, it's going to be a lot more like slicey through the skin. So it can be a lot more traumatizing. And then the 2 numbers at the back correlate to the needle grouping, which basically just means how many needles are in the cartridge. So if you see something that says like 1205 RL, that basically stands for, okay, the gauge is a 12, which I think is like right in the middle. I think it goes from 8 to, I want to say 14. I'm not positive on that. Don't quote me on that. And then the 05 stands for how many needles are in the grouping. So that's going to be a 5. Typically, artists are going to be working in a range from like 3, at least in where I'm at, 3 to like all the way up to like usually 11. But I feel like when you're learning, if you guys can start with a grouping that's like a 7 or a 9, that's what I always recommend. So, and I also recommend starting with a gauge that's somewhere in the middle. So I would recommend starting with like a 1209 or a 1207 or something along those lines. Also, if this is confusing, please let me know. I know this is something that really tripped me up when I was kind of learning about it. I can also drop you guys a link to kind of explaining like what the needles mean and all that sort of stuff. You're going to see a lot of different types of needles, like I already touched on. You're going to see round liners, round shaders, magnums, curved magnums, flat shaders. When you're beginning, just start with liners and just do your line work. And then you can figure out, how to go about shading. And if anyone has questions about shading, I can touch on that as well. But I feel like getting a really good grip on lining is always going to be the best way to start out. Okay, let's keep moving. So some resources that I used, and I will drop these into the chat as well. I did a lot of YouTube, countless hours of YouTube, and I did find some creators that I really liked. So I'm going to drop those guys in there. I used that tattoo guy on YouTube, Jono Smith. And then there's another one that I actually personally don't have experience with, but their account is called Tattooing 101. And it looks like their courses or their education is really well organized. So I'm going to send those guys. And then I also used, this is really silly, but I used some Domestika courses, and you guys can look into these on your own. However, they are in, I think they're in Portuguese, but they're like $15. So I bought them and then I just turned on the captions because they have captions in English. And unless you really want to challenge yourself, you can do that too. But they do courses on how to like whip shade, how to soft shade, how to even do a tattoo, how to do a design. Like there's some really, really good courses. They just happen to be in Portuguese. So that's on Domestika is the website. And if you look up anything tattoo related, I feel like all of their courses I would recommend to anyone as long as you're willing to like put captions on. And then of course, if you guys follow me on TikTok, I've been doing like a self-taught series for a while. My name is the same on TikTok. And that's all free content. As long as if you have a TikTok, you can just follow I have like different tabs. One's called like self-taught tattoo. One's called like, they're all different, but I'll be posting more regularly on that as well with just some like little tidbits of knowledge and stuff like that. So I will also be implementing / like building course materials via Instagram subscription or Patreon or YouTube. I haven't totally figured out what that will look like yet, but if you guys are interested in specifically learning from me and hearing what I have to say, all that will be available for like very, very cheap, because again, I think this information is already very, very accessible and I think it should be. But it does take a lot of time and energy to create and put out there. So yeah, girls gotta eat, but yeah, I will be updating you guys on that as well. Okay. Any questions so far? I know we're kind of pushing close to 8, so I'm going to try to keep moving here. Okay. Let's push on to where to learn / practice. Always start with fruit and fake skin. Do that until you feel so confident in your skills, because like Sam and I were talking about earlier, if you are going on this self-taught route, there's a good chance that you're not going to be putting out your best work in the first few months, and that's just what it is. So try to save your friend's skin and your own skin. And like really, I cannot stress enough, like good fruit to work on would be like bananas, oranges. I think I use grapefruit, melon, anything that is like porous and round, especially because if you're working on an uneven surface, that's going to emulate the way that skin works. Because if you're just working on, fake skin, that's great, but it's flat and you're not going to really get an idea for how like skin actually moves. Skin is such a weird surface to work on. Everybody's skin is different. Some people's skin is like dry, some is not, some is thick, some is thin, some is like, it really varies. And so just having as much experience on different surfaces as you possibly can before you touch skin is my best recommendation. And then, yes, Hannah, that's perfect. So I would, highly recommend. It's a little interesting, but you can buy pig ears and thighs at Asian or Hispanic markets. And those are great ways to actually, if you guys are down with that, get practice on like, real skin texture, because that's going to be one of the hardest transitions, going from non-skin to real skin. Again, before you guys even start on skin, like even when you're doing practice on fruit, like set up as if you have a real client in your chair. That means making sure that you have a completely sterile environment. I cannot emphasize enough, like educating yourself on sanitation practices. So those YouTube accounts I sent, they all have videos on how to set up and take down. And I do as well on my TikTok if you guys want to watch that. And if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out or comment. But really making sure you're practicing by those standards. So after that, just making sure, like, one thing that I guess finding, like, if you guys have family and friends that are willing to let you practice on them, that's going to be huge. And if you don't, building community that will, especially, I mean, there's like 20 of you in here right now and you're all interested in learning. And if you guys you guys are more than welcome to like link up with another. And if you guys are down, I can create some sort of list for those that are interested and like give each other's contact information or something, or Instagrams. I don't know if that interests anybody, let me know in the comments if you guys are curious. And if you guys would like to have kind of community. but yeah, finding friends that are willing. And then also just, you can still practice without breaking any laws. So like, for instance, the Denver Municipal Code clarifies that like you can't trade for anything of value and you cannot charge for your services if you're not operating under a valid license. Okay, great. So what does that mean? Just don't charge for your tattoos if you're learning, right? And I mean, yeah, again, just keeping it within like family and friends and like in your close circle is going to be really important while you're starting out. And then also just deciding which route you do want to take, whether that be self-taught or apprenticeship. And if you're not sure, get in touch with other artists in your area, hear how they got into it, ask to come in for a shadow day. I've met with quite a few people for coffee now, and they've just been like curious about information or like, hey, can I come shadow you for a day? Like, I am more than happy to have people, you know, as long as you've done some work and you're farther along in your education route, I'm more than happy to like check in with my client and see if they'd be okay with somebody shadowing for a session or something like that. But yeah, definitely building community is going to be a huge part of this. You're going to learn so much faster if you have people to ask questions to. And let's see. Oh, if you guys are going to do an apprenticeship, make an art portfolio and really focus on that, and really focus on broadening your art style and all that good stuff. And then bring it into shops, send emails, be persistent. I think nowadays, I was actually just talking with Tavi the other day, you know, times have changed. And I think that a lot of artists used to just want you to show up at the shop and be really persistent. And I think that still might be the case for a lot of shops, but an email goes a long way these days. A lot of people really don't want you just like walking into their shop, especially if they're private, you know, private studio. Like, I would really not enjoy if somebody just like walked in the front door and they're like, hey, here's my resume. I'd be like, no, put that away. Like, I have a client. So yeah, just look in to see what kind of space you're interested in walking into. Make sure that you are, you know, approaching it in an appropriate way. And if they're a private studio, which a lot of studios are nowadays, make sure you're just sending a nice little email and being persistent about it. Okay, and then lastly, as far as this goes, working in this industry, again, we already touched on this, but as a self-taught artist, it's going to definitely kind of set you apart or kind of put you in, you know, a certain box. So just make sure you're mentally prepared for that if you do decide to go the self-taught route. There's a lot of countries where that's not the case, and being self-taught is like hugely celebrated, and actually like more people are self-taught than apprentice. So I think it just, again, depends on where you are, but just be prepared for, you know, all that stuff. Goodness gracious, we're closing in on 8 o'clock, so I'm going to keep going as fast as I can, but I'm so sorry. I have so much information and not enough time. If anyone needs to hop off, that's totally okay. I am recording this, and if you would like me to send you the recording afterwards, that's okay. All right, business side of things. This is just like some personal advice, but one of the biggest things, we already talked about this earlier with like starting a studio, but I like to call it having a bridge job. So if you're someone that's working a 9 to 5 and you want to get into tattooing, but like leaping from 9 to 5 to tattooing isn't going to happen overnight, I highly recommend you work on getting a bridge job. Or if you already have a bridge job, that's great. A bridge job is basically a job that, you know, might not be your ultimate job, but requires like somewhat minimal effort, or like maybe you've been there for 4 years and you're feeling really comfortable. You can still actively show up for work and like have energy at the end of the day to pour into, you know, something else. So having a job that allows you the time, space, and energy to delve into other hobbies and stuff on the side is like very, very important if you're just trying to like dip your toes into this, because you need to be dedicating like a couple of days a week at least to learning how to do this, especially if you want to get into it quickly. To do confidence. I would say this is one of the biggest things. I talk about this with people all the time, is just being really confident, faking it till you make it, but also be super open and honest often. Be transparent about where your skills lie, especially if you're working with people outside of your close family and friends. If you don't know how to shade something, like anything like that, like I was just thinking about, I had a client yesterday and we were doing a piece with some like glass in it. And I literally was like, hey, I actually don't have a reference for this glass. I have no idea how to shade it. Can I have you come back on another day? And they were totally fine with that because I was just transparent about like, hey, I know I can do the shading. However, if you asked me to sit down and do it right now, like I wouldn't feel super comfortable. I'd rather have you come in at another time after I've like really studied, you know, how light looks on this glass or whatever. So just being transparent, but also, yeah, showing up confidently, knowing that like you're a good artist and you just got to keep putting work out there. Social media and marketing. This can be one of the hardest parts for artists in general, because a lot of us are artists first and social media doesn't come super naturally. I worked in marketing for 4 years before this, so I feel really fortunate in that a lot of my skills carry over, and just naturally, I just tend to enjoy the inner workings of social media. However, I talk to a lot of other artists in my industry, and for most of them, social media is like pulling teeth. They fucking hate it, and I get it. My biggest piece of advice for social media is, unless you've already built an account associated with your art, apart from like your personal stuff that has amassed like some sort of following or just in general, start a new account for your business. Or if you've had like the same account for 5 years and you have really low engagement and nobody's really, you know, you're posting your art, but nothing's really happening, just start a new account, start over. It's a better way to get engagement faster. You don't want followers that are going to be stale anyways. You want people that are coming in excited about your work, excited to see what you're posting. You want to build people in your niche. You want people that want to see your shit and that want to support you. You don't need to tell people what you're doing. Like if it makes you nervous setting up a new social media account for a new business endeavor, don't tell any of your friends. Just get a TikTok and start posting and see what happens. It doesn't have to be super finely, you know, tuned or anything like that. As long as you're showing up, that's what's most important. And then just showing up authentically as well. I would urge you guys to like sit down and ask yourself, like, who are you? What makes you different? Like, what makes you stand apart? Like when I first started out, I kind of sat down and looked at everything I was doing and I was like, what am I? Like, who am I? How do I define myself? Okay, what's my niche? Like, I'm self-taught. That's huge. There's not a lot of people in the industry, and there's more now, but there's not a lot of people in the industry that are self-taught. So that's already something that stands me apart. I'm woman-owned. That's great. I'm queer. That's also great. I'm like moderately funny. I'll use that to my advantage. Like it's just finding how you want to put content out there and like really owning that. And if social media pains you and you have a difficult time figuring out what to post, focus on creating content for that community that you want to build. Don't focus on creating content for an algorithm. Like if you really hate social media, just post for the people that you know, you're like, okay, this is my community and this is what I want to post about. And so I'm going to post about it. Start a TikTok if you haven't. Like having a bunch of different channels. Some posts are going to do really well on one platform and they're just going to go completely flat on the other. And you have to be okay with posting shit and having it just like be flat. Like some people are not going to interact. Take note of what works, take note of what doesn't, move on, like keep cycling content that does work for you. Like if you have a post that does really well, ask yourself why. If it's luck, like that happens from time to time, but a lot of times it's because that content or whatever is something that like people are interested in and want to talk about and want to engage in. So just come back to that, because people are forgetful. And like if you just keep posting about it, like, okay, well, I posted about, something a couple months ago that like really struck a chord, post about it again a few months later, if it worked for you. And again, just building having several different channels and understanding that like your content's not going to take off on all of them, but one video that you find that you tune for TikTok or Instagram or whatever might do better on a different platform than the other. Having an email list, hugely important, especially in these days, because social media is like ever changing, and we really have no idea if Instagram's going to be around for another 5 years, or TikTok or whatever. Like the US government could sell TikTok tomorrow. We have no idea. So having a place that is, really steadfast, that you can count on. Email has been around forever. Like, it's a very primitive way of communicating, but it works. So even if you're just starting out, even if you literally haven't started tattooing on skin yet, and somebody says, hey, I really like your work, can I get a tattoo? And you're like, sorry, I don't, I'm not taking clients yet. You can always say instead, hey, I'm not taking clients yet, but give me your email. I'll put you on a wait list. And that way, when you get going, you already have a list of people that you can contact and like bring into your space. So finding a way to capture that is really important. Just being adaptable in general. And then further down the line, having a website can also, it's the same thing where like websites have been around for forever. People will try to find your information wherever works for them. So having it across multiple platforms makes sense. Your content in general, you should strive to, we call it in marketing school. I hate using like marketing jargon because I hated marketing school, but we call it the 3 E's, which is just educate, entertain, empower. You should try to touch on one of those 3 if you want to have like meaningful content. And if nothing else, again, if this is overwhelming to you and you really don't give a shit about social media, just show up, just post what you did that day, or like post a work in progress. People are happy to see like what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be super refined. We just talked about how expensive Adobe apps are. So stop paying for your Adobe shit. You can do everything you need to do in Canva, to be honest. I've paid for Adobe products and that's a controversial opinion, so I'm sure other people do not believe that, which is fine. But I have been paying for Adobe products for the last like 5 years, and I just canceled my membership, and I'm just using Canva now. Like, it's literally, honestly, it's faster at this point, and it does what I need it to do, save for like some occasions, but for the most part, Canva will do everything you need to do. Photo P is an online Photoshop for free. It's a little janky, but it works perfect. So if you're struggling with money, you can find other alternatives. Thank you, Lauren. Have a good night. Okay, we are almost to the end here. Thanks for hanging in with me, you guys. And then lastly, on social media, if you guys are focused on growth and that's really important to you, I would highly recommend just following a bunch of like Instagram coach pages. They put out so many good tidbits for free. They will put like, they'll share trending audios, they'll share like tips and tricks. I've literally never paid for a service from an IG coach just because I went to marketing school and I feel like I already paid for my education. But I would highly recommend following a bunch of them if growth is your goal, because they will share a lot of information that's like pertinent to growth. And then lastly, as far as social media goes, take breaks and honor that you need rest. Social media can be really, really draining, especially as an artist. So if you need to take like a week or 2 weeks or a month, whatever it is, if you need to take it off, just take it off and show up when you're ready to show up and all that good stuff. So, you're in charge of your own destiny. That's the cool thing about tattooing, is you literally do your own schedule, you do your own rates, you do your own hours. Like, yeah, it's very conducive to anyone that is that's a self-starter and like wants to run their own business. And then last but not least, and then we'll jump into questions. Somebody asked me best tips learned early on. And something that I heard someone else say once that I really liked is they said, and they didn't say it exactly like this, but they said, half of being a good tattoo artist is being a good innovator. I loved that because mistakes happen all the time in tattooing. Like, you may not know this, but your artist more than likely messes up on your tattoo at some point, even if it's tiny, microscopic, and they're the only person that notices. But if you can learn to be innovative and you can learn to incorporate those, and you can be on your feet and quick thinking, like, that's going to be huge. Again, confidence. So fake it till you make it, but make sure you're still being honest and transparent about where you're at. Nobody's ever going to be mad if you're like, hey, I'd love to give you a tattoo. However, I've never done shading before and I really want to try, or this or that. Like, what do you think? And like, just talking people through the whole process and like really telling them where you're at is going to go a long ways. And then lastly, don't move on to body placements you aren't ready for. That was one of my first big mistakes. And I'm sure anyone else who's self-taught and has already started their journey can resonate with that. I moved on to ribs after like 2 months of tattooing, and that was probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. So stick to limbs as long as you can, as long as you're comfortable with it. I would recommend sticking to limbs for like a full 6 months if possible, unless you feel like you're really getting it down and you're ready for a more challenging placement. Like shit can get really weird on other parts of the body. So arms and legs are a great bet if you're just trying to get into tattooing and learning how skin works. So yeah, I know that was a lot of word vomit and I was just trying to get through some stuff. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. Let me know if you guys have any. The first tattoo I ever did was a huge rib piece for my mom on a cot in my apartment. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Once you've practiced a lot, how do you know you're ready to try skin? That's a good question. I don't know if you ever truly feel super ready to do it. I think the first tattoo I did, I was literally like this. I would say, yeah, just feeling like, I would say it's more about who you're doing the tattoo on. If it's yourself and you're okay with, tattooing something up high on your thigh that's going to be hidden, like that's on you. You're not, nobody else is involved. So I feel like you do that at your own discretion. If it's on a friend, making sure that they're like a super, like, making sure that they're a very kind and patient person. My first tattoo on skin was on someone's butt cheek, and they literally had like 16 other tattoos on their butt, and it was like all horrible. It was like the Four Loko logo and then like something else. And basically it was like, okay, there's really no, like, I can't really do anything worse than what's already there. And he was very acknowledging of that. So I feel like that was a really good first experience for me. But I would say just go at your own discretion. And, like I said, being open and honest about where you're at and making sure you're not having people coming to you expecting like a perfect tattoo is really important. Tips on packing in black. Packing in black is so tricky to learn. I think that the tough thing with black is it's really just about being really, really patient, going super slow, making like the tiniest little circles. I usually, if I can, now I use, well, doesn't matter. And when you're learning, I would recommend using like a mag, which is just a bunch of different needle groupings, or needles grouped together in kind of a row. You can look that up as well. I'd recommend using that and just doing really, really tight, tiny circles, being really patient. You can overwork someone's skin by going too fast and running your voltage too high. So running your volts really low, it's going to take forever, but it's better that than to overwork someone's skin. So patience is the big key there. Could you post the article about the different needles? Yes, I can. Let me find that right now. Let's see. Hold on just a second here. Tattoo. There we go. This one, I felt like I was looking at this earlier today and I felt like it did a pretty good job. So I'm going to post this in the chat. Packing in black. I have my line work down, but sometimes I'm having trouble packing solid black. Any tips? I got a new machine with a longer stroke and still adjusting to it. I think again, with packing in black, being really patient. The cool thing about black, and this is something I did while I was learning as well, is like, you can always pack as much as you can in the first session. And as long as you're, again, transparent about where you're at and saying like, hey, we might not be able to get this all like saturated on the first go. You can always ask someone to come back like a month or two later once their skin has healed and you can pack more black in. So I'd highly recommend doing that versus like just overworking the skin on the first go, especially if it's something that you're nervous about. Tips on prepping yourself to transition to using a machine, weights, certain type of ball of pen, etc. Ooh, good question. I personally didn't do anything between the transition, but I feel like if you wanted to, you could certainly like wrap your pencil with some grip tape. Grip tape's really important while you're tattooing. A lot of tattooers get carpal tunnel syndrome, and so having that grip there is going to really help, especially with all the vibrating and everything happening in your hand. But it is going to be a huge transition because you're literally grabbing this pen that's like quite thick, right? So I would say wrapping your current pen with some grip tape, or yeah, I bet you could find weights online or something. Like if you're interested in like really getting into that, I feel like you could probably find some weights or something online that would help with that a lot. Any other questions? Anything that I missed? No? Okay. I think, unless anyone has anything else, I think we're all wrapped up here. Not too bad on timing. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys showing up. This is like, I've been really wanting to get into, education. This is really important to me. And again, it's just really important to me that information is available to people that are trying to get into tattooing. So I know that this might not have been the most polished or, whatever. It might not have been the best, meeting, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here and just giving me space to kind of talk on this platform. It's really awesome. So stoked to see. And then if you guys are interested, will you please email me? I'll try to capture these chats, but I'm not sure if they disappear after. So if you guys are interested in having like some sort of community group where you guys can talk to each other, send me an email with maybe your Instagram. Does Instagram sound good? Or do you guys want to do like email? I don't want to give each other's phone numbers. That would be weird. So Instagram or email, let me know which you prefer. Instagram. IG. Okay, great. Send me your Instagrams, please, on my email, and I will get you guys all in touch with each other. All right. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I'll also be posting this recording at some point somewhere. Just got to figure that out. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.